Charles Leclerc stated that the new regulations will be his great opportunity at Ferrari. In today's video, I will share the interview Leclerc gave, talking about both this year and next year. We need to see the comparison between Ferrari and McLaren, two different design philosophies, but which will be the decisive showdown of the second half of the season. We also need to talk about Perez and Cadillac, a possible departure of Colapinto from Formula 1, and much more. Before we begin, please leave a support like, and now let's look at everything in detail. Charles Leclerc spoke openly in a long interview granted to Autosprint, drawing a clear line between the present and the future of his career at Ferrari. Words that capture the Monaco driver's state of mind and clearly outline the direction he sees ahead for 2026, with the arrival of the new technical regulations, which he has been waiting for years. "I really hope we can open a winning cycle," he declared. "It's been too long since Ferrari was at the top of the World Championship, and I want to be behind the wheel when we get back there." Leclerc doesn't beat around the bush. Beating McLaren this year is almost impossible, and the most realistic goal is at most second place in the Constructors Championship. After an intense first half of the season, Leclerc decided to spend the summer break away from the spotlight. Holidays spent with family, with his girlfriend, with his dog, away from paddocks and briefings. And there is a very simple Charles in this case. He's a normal guy. But let's see what the realistic goals for the season are. With McLaren setting the pace everywhere, fast on all circuits, stable in every condition, the only achievable target is to beat Red Bull and Mercedes for second place. Leclerc knows this well. Red Bull is experiencing highs and lows, with inconsistent performances. Mercedes alternates exploits like Montreal on an anonymous weekend. Ferrari maintains a consistent performance, but always at a fixed distance from McLaren. The developments brought to the team have made a small step forward, but it's not enough. The gap exists, and the goal is to reduce it before the end of the year. These updates can bring us closer to McLaren, but it will depend on how much we can exploit them. This is what Leclerc said, and he added, they are always the benchmark ahead on every track. One of the most interesting parts of the interview is Leclerc's self-criticism. When he debuted in Formula 1, tire management was one of his weakest areas. Over the years, he has worked methodically without sparing criticism to become the most complete driver. Today, the work is more refined, focusing on driving details, precision, and the ability to adapt to every scenario. "I'm never completely satisfied," he said. "I want to be the most complete driver possible for myself and the team." On the technical front, the SF25 still does not have the pure performance needed to compete for victory. And that's where the team is focusing its efforts. Leclerc explained an aspect that may come as a surprise. This year, he deliberately chose a more extreme setup, sacrificing qualifying to have a better car for the race. He has aggressive settings, difficult to manage on Saturday. A better race pace, with greater consistency and less tire degradation. It's a carefully studied compromise because in 2025, a pole position alone won't be enough to win. This was demonstrated by the last race in Hungary. It's necessary to manage the race from start to finish. And Leclerc stated, it's not enough to be strong in qualifying. Balance is needed, and overall, this choice is paying off. The message is clear. Leclerc looks to 2026 as the moment when Ferrari can truly turn the tide. The new technical regulations will bring a complete reset. And the Monegasque wants to be at the center of this project, leading the team in a new winning cycle. His determination remains intact, but his awareness is mature. Collective effort, constant development, and especially a long-term vision are needed. And for this reason, Charles, if we thought that the top driver in 2025 would be Hamilton, well, he hasn't proven it so far. In fact, Leclerc is earning more points than the British driver. So it's normal for the Monegasque driver to aim to be the lead driver, the reference in Ferrari also in the coming years. He wants to be the driver who brings Ferrari back to the top and fights for the title. And the new regulatory cycle could be the right opportunity. That's why he wants to stay at Ferrari to become the decisive driver at the right moment. But let's see a direct comparison between this year's Ferrari and McLaren. The foundation of McLaren's current dominance doesn't come from nowhere. The 2024 MCL38 demonstrated enormous potential. And instead of completely changing it, Wokking's engineers chose to exaggerate and refine that platform, creating the MCL39. It was a smart continuity choice, starting from an already winning concept, pushing every margin of improvement and daring more where needed. However, the journey was anything but simple. In 2023, the McLaren MCL60 struggled in the lower midfield. We remember, for example, in Bahrain. The first race of the season was eliminated in Q1. The McLaren that now dominates in just 2 years. The leap only came in 2024, when Red Bull's sudden drop at the start of the season opened a window of opportunity. Lando Norris's first victory in Miami, favored by particular circumstances, was the signal. McLaren had finally found the right technical key. From there, a series of perfectly calibrated updates. it solidified the technological leadership. Consistency in developments has been impressive. Every aerodynamic package has brought an improvement. No rollback after updates. A sign of an extremely accurate factory simulation. Planning carried out without haste only introduces what truly works. Ferrari, on the other hand, chose the opposite approach. In fact, the Maranello team decided that the 2024 technical project no longer had room for growth, and they undertook a radical change with the front pull rod suspension. Just like McLaren and Red Bull, a bold choice, but made in the last year of regulatory continuity. A time when, historically, maintaining the base and refining it can be less risky. The problem? The SF25 showed serious limitations from the beginning. Complex balance, requiring drivers to drive with the handbrake on. Possibility to push to the maximum without penalizing compromises. According to Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, this has meant approaching each weekend with alternative strategies, often sacrificing absolute performance to avoid behavioral issues. In short, since 2023, Ferrari has changed its aeromechanical philosophy practically every season. This has prevented the creation of a stable platform on which to build consistent improvements. The developments of the SF25 arrived even ahead of the competition, a sign of great work in the factory, but they often did not meet expectations. Unlike McLaren, which refines a consolidated concept, Ferrari moved on uncertain grounds without the security of having a truly solid base. So, the question remains, was the fundamental philosophy wrong? Or were the solutions adopted not working as expected? The 2025 season is the last before the new technical regulations of 2026, and perhaps for this reason, completely changing the project was an excessive risk. Staying on the familiar path while improving weak points could have ensured more stability, especially in such a tight championship. McLaren demonstrated that continuity, supported by a rigorous development project, can lead to technical dominance. Ferrari, on the other hand, finds itself reflecting on a transitional season in which the hoped-for leap did not materialize. Therefore, 2026 will be the true test. We know that McLaren's last world championship was in 2008 with Lewis Hamilton, with that title slipping away from Felipe Massa and going to the British driver. And so, no one would have ever expected that a customer team could dominate in Formula One. Because yes, McLaren is Mercedes' customer team. Mercedes perhaps made the mistake of giving their engines to McLaren. This made Mercedes' aerodynamic team appear secondary compared to McLaren's. The regulatory cycle from 2022 to 2025 has shown that some manufacturers, like McLaren and Red Bull, which are not engine builders, can dominate a cycle. Red Bull used the Honda engine until 2025, while McLaren used the Mercedes engine. Starting in 2026, we know that Racing Bulls and Red Bull itself will use the internally produced engine by Red Bull powertrains, with support from Ford in some parts of production, and also in quality control. But the MCL39 is a strong aerodynamics car. The engine is the same in Mercedes, yet they are two completely different forces. And the secret behind this McLaren is certainly the know-how brought in by other engineers. Coming from Mercedes, Red Bull, we think of Rob Marshall himself. This particular McLaren MCL39 has superior aerodynamic efficiency compared to the competition. An optimal integration between the chassis and the engine, despite not having designed it, ensuring consistent reliability and performance in all conditions. It is no coincidence that Alpine will also follow McLaren's philosophy in 2026 by adopting Mercedes engines instead of their own Renault engines. A significant blow for the French team, but they understand that McLaren's winning strategy is this: use a reliable and high-performing customer engine, like Mercedes in this case, and develop internally while focusing 100% on aerodynamics. Maranello's team hasn't won the title in 18 years, and 2026 will be a crucial year. There will be a comprehensive design of the single-seater, with direct development of the power unit. And they need to be competitive right from the start, because there will be limited development margins and a medium-term frozen regulation. Also pay attention to the Ferrari paradox, because if a Ferrari customer team, or even Cadillac itself, beating the official team would be a significant blow for the team. So they can't afford that scenario, which as of today seems something unattainable. But if we think about it a few years ago, who would have imagined that McLaren would have beaten Mercedes? No one. With such a dominant Mercedes in the hybrid era, McLaren has shown that modern Formula One is not a territory reserved only for pure constructors who develop engines and chassis. You can also have a mix of elements to create the right recipe. But let's see how Ferrari has performed in the last Grand Prix races to make an assessment. In the recent Grand Prix races, the SF25 introduced the new rear suspension, and the data are promising, but the final verdict has not yet been reached. In Belgium, we saw weather variable conditions, and the sprint weekend made everything difficult to analyze the data and actual performance. In Hungary, a problem with Leclerc's car interrupted the assessment, even though until halfway through the race, The Monegasque was on pole and in the running for victory. So, Ferrari is second in the Constructors Championship ahead of Red Bull and Mercedes, but directly behind McLaren. The seasonal tally so far is 5 podiums, 1 pole position by Leclerc in Hungary, and a sprint victory by Hamilton in China, later annulled due to technical disqualification. The victory column remains empty, while McLaren continues to rack up double podiums. Red Bull with Verstappen and Mercedes with Russell also secured wins. So, Vassar wants to end 2025 with some victories, that is clear. But he knows well that the real goal is 2026, to fight, to have a car capable of contending for the title. However, there is a fundamental problem. History teaches Jean Todt, Ferrari, that those currently in Red Bull have built winning cycles thanks to continuity. But there is a problem that hinders growth. Few top technicians want to come to Maranello. And there are several reasons. Certainly, the comfort zone is the British countryside, where all the engineers want to stay. Speaking Italian is considered useless. The language of Formula One is English. There are also differences in approach between the factory and the track. Additionally, there is a reputational issue. An engineer risks messing up their career by entering a context where the success rate is perceived as low. Hamilton himself expressed doubts about some working methods he saw at Ferrari. And so, at Maranello, information management is considered excessively political. Too much focus on maintaining a calm public image. A change is needed internally, because the perceived attitude seems distant from some parts of the team's work. Let's remember that Jean Todt inherited a Ferrari that was regularly being overtaken by a Williams, and without a victory for 3 years. Horner built Red Bull from the ashes, starting from Jaguar's legacy, which is practically zero. Rastro, on the other hand, took over a team that is the vice world champion and is not performing well so far. So, we need to see if Rastro's work is done with a future perspective, to create a winning cycle by 2026. But let's see who will be Cadillac's future driver, a team that will be powered by Ferrari. Perez is close to Cadillac, and the announcement is expected for Monza. In fact, Sergio Perez's return to Formula One seems to be just around the corner. According to rumors from PlanetFormula1.com, the Mexican driver is close to signing with Cadillac, the new American team that will debut on the grid in 2026. The official announcement could come right during the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, at the beginning of September, replicating the communication strategy seen last year with the announcement of Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes. Cadillac will be the 11th team to race in 2026. From the very beginning, the team management made it clear that they wanted to pair an experienced driver with a young talent. And Perez fits perfectly into the first profile. After parting ways with Red Bull at the end of 2024, Perez was out of the 2025 World Championship. But he always made it clear that his goal was to return. We saw that Perez changed managers at the beginning of the year. And additionally, the statements from his father carry weight. In fact, Antonio Perez Garibay stated, acronym, the best blind version is yet to come. Acronym, what will come will be historic. We haven't left Formula One, so probably a Cadillac driver will be Perez. But who will be the young talent to grow alongside the Mexican driver? Will it be an American driver to strengthen the team's identity? We will find out later. So, in my opinion, Perez's choice for Cadillac is good because he is a solid, experienced driver. And an experienced driver is needed, along with a young driver within a new team. What needs to grow starts from zero, and we'll use the Ferrari engine. But what is the only certainty if we want to call it that? A lot of work will be needed on the aerodynamics to develop it to the best. And an experienced driver is needed to guide the development direction. Certainly, a driver like Perez or Bottas is very useful for Cadillac. But let's also consider Colapinto because he risks losing his seat at Alpine. Franco Colapinto's debut as a full-time Formula One driver risks turning into a fleeting adventure. Alpine was promoted mid-season after the Miami GP to replace Jack Doohan, but the Argentine has yet to score a single point. He is the only driver on the entire 2025 grid with 0 points. Conversely, his teammate Pierre Gasly has achieved 5 top, 10 finishes, earning 20 points, demonstrating that there is potential to compete in the midfield. Instead, Colapinto has made several mistakes and incidents, including the crash during the Pirelli tests on August 6th, which caused significant damage to the car and further complicated his relationship with the team. According to Formula1.nl, Colapinto's days in Formula One could be numbered. In fact, his management has already begun evaluating alternatives for 2026, with 2 main scenarios: WC with the Endurance World Championship and the United States. Other teams might offer a seat, such as Cadillac itself, but currently there are no ongoing negotiations, and the team's priorities are other drivers. For now, Colapinto is expected to finish 2025 with Alpine, although with Flavio Briatore, it's always uncertain. The second half of the season will see him on tracks where he already raced in 2024, except Zandvoort. an advantage he must maximize to prove he deserves to stay in Formula 1. Do you think Cadillac is right to take Perez on their team? Will Colapinto go to Cadillac in WC? Will he go to IndyCar? Or will he stay with Alpine? How do you judge the Argentine driver's season so far? Let me know in the comments your opinion on all the topics and the Ferrari situation. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss any Ferrari and Formula 1 themed videos. Here from Rastro, see you in the next video.